Hey there, my name is Przemek and this is the review of Grzegorz Bojanek album called Uncertain. This album is made by an experienced Polish ambient sculptor, Grzegorz Bojanek. In the past he had the project called Eta Karine, but currently he's recording under his own name. He was also a founder of a small ambient label called Eta Label, which is now defunct, but it has left us several really interesting albums, like for example a few Polish-Chinese ambient collaborations. As far as I remember, it was an initiative called CHOP, and apart from making albums together, it also included live meetings and collaborative shows in Poland as well as in China. It was like 15 or 20 years ago, but if you check at a label Bandcamp, those collaborations are there to find, as well as many other worthy ambient works from Poland, from China, from other countries as well. The label is no more, but Grzegorz is still producing ambient music, like this one, Uncertain. As you can see, a very minimal design. Inside there is also a declaration. Ambient is the new punk. Well, I wish. Not in my life, I guess, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, this album is a result of musicians' uncertainty, as the title says, raised by a pandemic and war. By the way, this is the info for those interested in gear and musical equipment. The album was made mostly on the synthesizers and software made by independent developers like Brambos and Heimbach, but also Giorgio San Cristoforo, Berna 3 and Bento. Okay, I mention it now because later I may forget about it. As I said, the album is like a few impressions on our current reality. And how it changed. It has changed compared to like 3 years ago. The pandemic has changed a lot in our existence. It shaped our comfortable lives, even if we haven't been touched by COVID directly. And I guess even if it isn't the main problem of our world today, it still resonates in some people's minds, one way or another. There are tracks about different aspects on pandemic, certain side effects, like for example Forgotten Mask, which is about all these masks people threw away laying on the streets and sidewalks. I remember the first day of pandemic, there was also a recommendation of using rubber gloves, and I still have this image in my mind, my local Aldi supermarket and dozens of used rubber gloves around the parking lot. But anyway, as I said, today's main worldwide problem is different. That is war, obviously, and there are tracks also about this on this album, like no positive solutions. As the musician says, no matter who wins, who loses, people just die. Man, woman, children, animals die. The nature is polluted. Well, sounds obvious, of course, but apparently not everyone remembers about it. So as you can see, this album is about here and now, about the state of our current world, and that the problems many of us had a few years ago today may seem like trivial or not important. Not in all cases, obviously. And it may seem that album is supposed to be dark or sorrowful, but eventually it's not, really. The music is rather peaceful and contemplative. Sometimes I feel it's like remembering those not so distant years when it was a bit harder to take us out of our comfort zone, and all this with hope for the better, perhaps. Of course, there's still the element of anxiety or uncertainty, as the title suggests, like in the second track, which is titled "Bad Decisions Lead to Disaster." But in general, these are soothing ambient textures, delicate melodies, which make Uncertain quite a relaxing album. Relaxing yet anchored in the reality and the events that happened around us recently. And maybe for at least a couple of people, it could be a kind of a trigger to think and wonder, what could I do to make world at least a tiny bit better place. You may say such attitude is kind of naive. Well, maybe, but we can't all be cynical. And don't get me wrong, you really don't need to think about the first world problems while listening to Uncertainty. If you just want to lay down and relax with some good ambient, this album does the job very nicely in this context as well. With Uncertain, I also got one more album by Grzegorz. It's this one. It's called Na Trasie Kolei Warszawsko-Wiedeńskiej, which means in Polish on the Warsaw-Vienna railroad. But it's not a music, but a set of field recordings, recorded one summer morning 2020 between Częstochowa and Katowice, two Polish towns. Katowice is my hometown. You can hear the excerpts of people talking, train sounds, obviously, the announcements on the train stations, the sound of escalators, etc. And all this without editing or adding any synthetic musical elements, like, for example, Geir Jensen did on his Cho Oyu wonderful record. I show this because I listened to this album very often the last couple of days. But no, here you have raw material being the attempt to capture the feeling of railroads and the area around it. It's not music, as I said, but more like an audio documentary made by the artist whose family was for decades strongly connected with railroad transport. So if you're interested in this form of art, check it out as well. Okay, that would be it. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, subscribe the channel, click like, and see you soon.